This is another iRaw podcast.
Nature specifically talks about reconnection, reciprocity, respect, relationship with the natural world, with nature. And that's really more of that like intentional connection that you can build.
Welcome to Wildly Unplugged, sharing stories of nature, conservation, and creativity. Discover what develops when you unplug and step outdoors.
Claire, thank you so much for being here.
I'm really happy to be here, Lauren. Thanks for having me.
And we're just going to dive right in, and because I'm really excited to talk to you because it sounds like we have so much in common. Your work sits at the intersection of mental health, nature, and sustainability, which feels incredibly needed right now, more than ever. What was the moment where you realized that these things weren't separate things? They are all connected.
Yeah, no, that's such a great question. And I think for me, it really goes back to more of my undergrad studies, actually, when I was studying wildlife conservation and environmental restoration in my bachelor's. And we were being trained to go into a technical field like restoration and invasive species removal and the plant world. And it occurred to me that we're hurting the planet because we're so disconnected from it. Like there's no kind of reciprocity feeling, there's no real like deeper connection. And that kind of like awakening moment for me really led me to like, oh, I should study psychology, I should study like that more spiritual relationship with the natural world and that more the mindfulness relationship. I mean, I was already on a bit of a spiritual journey at the time, and I was finding that folks would sit down next to me in class because I was like grounded or calm, and they would tell me about their life, and I liked that. And so it was really like this, like, oh, we're harming the planet because we don't identify with it, we don't associate with it at a deeper level. And so from then on, I pursued psychology, ecotherapy, etc., which is what led me to this work.
Very good. Now, did you have your own personal burnout moment?
Yeah, I don't know if I would call it burnout. I've definitely experienced some version of that. I've had some, I would say I hit rock bottom twice, is what I tell people. The first time I dropped out of college without any plans to go back. I was clinically depressed. I was really young. I was like early 18-year-old, or young 18-year-old, I should say. And then actually, what I did then is I did a course with the National Outdoor Leadership School. I don't know if you're familiar with NOLS, is their name, the acronym. And so I signed up and we went sailing on the Sea of Cortez in Baja California, Mexico. And it was very much like off the grid, all of these like young adults looking for their next phases in life. And it was super tough. It was 3 weeks, nothing. We just had like, or whatever supplies we had on the boat, that was it. And we would just go to shore at night and we were learning how to sail. And I had one pretty powerful wildlife experience before that with dolphins in the wild in the Bahamas. And that kind of just like solidified. I mean, I knew I was wanting to do more with the environment, and my initial university didn't let me do that. That's why I dropped out. And so I was just like, this is what I want to do. I want to feel this connection. I want to feel other people get excited about the natural world, the animals that we were seeing on the boats. And after that, I volunteered a whole bunch around the world in conservation and wildlife. And then, yeah, I made my way back to environmental restoration. But that was the first time. And then I actually had a traumatic brain injury, which is what led me to write the book a few years ago. And so that was really, I felt my life was over. So not quite a burnout moment, but like huge psychological crises and then medical crises.
Wow. So you said that injury led you to write the book. What did you learn along the way writing the book? How has that inspired you, and how do you think it's inspiring others?
Yeah, I mean, I think I felt like I was being given a second chance when I recovered, when I rehabbed my brain, essentially. And I was not liable in the accident that happened that got me into that state. And so it was really like the fact that I recovered, I really felt like was a miracle, and I wanted to have more impact on the world. So I was already practicing as an ecotherapist, I was building my business, and I really just wanted, it's a time of kind of like doom and gloom in anything environmental right now. And I wanted people to feel like teach them the tools that I use around resilience and hope and how to build that when whatever that is, whether it's injury, trauma, or something else like burnout. I really wanted folks to have more capacity and more tools. And I felt like if I'm going to write a book, it's now, as I'm like coming out of this major life event, and also just knowing how many crises there are in the world. I wanted to respond and do my part in expanding my work and my reach, right? Because you can work, I live in California, so a lot of people are open to this stuff of ecotherapy, nature connections, forest bathing, but I wanted to reach a bigger audience across like the divide that we find politically, socioeconomically, et cetera. So I was really trying to like reach more people with the book as well.
Very good. Now, when you say like being disconnected from nature, what does that look like in someone's everyday? And how can somebody recognize that?
I mean, unfortunately, I feel like we're disconnected from ourselves oftentimes too. So sometimes they go together, and there's absolutely no judgment there too for anyone listening. Like, I mean, it's a hard world that we live in, no matter where you're at and circumstantially. I think that my clients are having like high anxiety around anything, whether it's the climate or something else, whether it's wars or like inflation or gas prices. It's just like anxiety is a symptom of kind of that worry about the future. When some people call it eco anxiety when it's climate specific or planet specific. So I would say that the complete overwhelm that comes with that, the nervous system dysregulation. So if you're dysregulated and your nervous system is out of whack, it means that I don't know, you're feeling like agitated, you're feeling stressed, you're feeling overwhelmed. Some people, it shows up more as like a depression, a hopelessness. A lot of those symptoms are associated with burnout, as you were speaking to earlier. I mean, I think it's just like that something is off in your body. I don't even want to call it wrong because I don't want to, there's no judgment there. I think it's, especially for women, I work a lot with women leaders too. And whether it's a disconnection from yourself and you need to find that again through whatever that is for you, whatever lights you up. For some people, it is nature. For some people, it's like the arts, or it's both in your case, or spirituality, religion, sports, exercise. Like, but for nature specifically, I think just acknowledging that it can be a huge ally in our lives, and that it's like, more or less accessible if we just open our mind to it. It's always around us and we're always a part of it. I studied kind of like that foundational attachment to nature for my book. I did a lot of research on that. And it's something that people don't talk about. And the more grounded you feel, and grounded, it means you feel calm. It means you feel like things are a little bit more in control. And yeah, it's like comes with like a inner peace feeling. So if you are connecting to nature, and we can talk about that in a second of what that looks like, but you're going to feel more settled and a little bit more like held in a container of the world that is constantly shifting and evolving. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I noticed that like this thing, the cell phone, I don't think we're supposed to take in everything that we're seeing every single day. And then I notice when I go outside, it's like you can feel all those worries and stuff starting to just melt away. And also, I feel like when I'm sitting at my desk at work, and we can't help it, that's what we have to do. People have to make money. Like if I'm on a computer, I'm like, I did all this work, but it's not tactile. I'm not creating like I am with art. If I'm working on my computer, I'm like, I feel like I got nothing done today. But if I have a stack of artwork that I've done, or I'm out walking or doing something with my dogs, I feel like I've accomplished, or cooked something, I feel like I've accomplished something for that day. So is that part of what like renaturing looks like?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think taking away a little bit less attention to the digital space and digital world in our lives and back to what's right here in front of us is really important. And a lot of it just like, I mean, I use examples all the time, but like noticing the critters that are around as you go on your walk, or noticing how the weather's changing depending on time of day or season of the year, and just starting to expand your mind or your consciousness into being a part of the greater natural environment around you. And so that's what I mean by renature, is starting to acknowledge that you belong and you exist within a bigger ecosystem.
Very good. Gosh, there are a couple different directions I want to go, because I saw an article today about data centers and how many there are and how they're taking over our natural spaces. And it's like, we need digital stuff to do our jobs, but we're slowly taking away from our green spaces, which How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so I mean, AI in the climate world, because I do work a little bit in that world as well, is it's like a hotly contested. I've heard everything about it. So I'll share, there was one really well-known climate scientist who shared that he studies carbon footprint and that aspect of climate, and he was saying that AI, he thinks that AI isn't really having as much of an impact on carbon as we say it does. But he's like, I'm more worried about the brain pollution from it and mind hacking that's happening. I have heard the opposite where like people are saying, I don't know, I haven't fact checked any of this, but people are saying like you use ChatGPT, let's say for, I don't know, a couple of minutes and it's like pouring potable water like out as if, you're using like all of this water resource. I don't really know from a data center and social justice perspective. I've heard a lot because of course that's part of my work as well is people are getting displaced, like people who don't have a lot of economic power or income and can't just relocate and are being forced out of their what they call home. And that I think is a huge problem. And of course, as you're mentioning, the more we push people out, the more we're pushing out wildlife and endemic species of plants and trees and all of the above. So it is definitely a concern. I think technology has some potential. I've also heard like they're using it for, of course, healthcare, but also some climate applications. And I think if we can do AI for good, that's okay. But if it's AI purely for profit and for more things that we don't actually need as humans, come on. I think we already know we have a problem. We're just making it worse. But unfortunately, this goes to like the systemic lens, which is capitalism and the economy runs on profit. And again, like I don't go into politics when I talk about this, so I try not to. It's just like that's how the world is, and we need to adapt to our circumstances. And part of that is that rise of AI right now.
I had a phone call with a medical company and the operator was AI. And it would have been one thing if I knew it was AI, like that's fine. But it was like having a conversation and asking like, oh, do you have plans this weekend? And trying to fill the time while they're working. And that feels very deceptive.
Wow. That's on another level.
Right? It's just,
Wow.
yeah, that's that whole thing
I'm
just
sorry
kind
to
of
hear that. Yeah, it's crazy.
it's like, I don't know, next level AI that I think the whole landscape is just going to change in the next couple years.
Yeah.
But back to happier things. How long did it take you to write your book? And you interviewed specialists and stuff. Like, how
Yeah.
did you go about reaching out to people?
Yeah, so I was lucky in that I wrote my master's thesis at the graduate level on ecotherapy and like its applications and where the field came from and how we can use it today. And so I had an outline, I would say I had a base for the book. And I worked with, it's called like a hybrid publisher. I'm not sure how you published, but there's self-publishing and then there's like modern publishing or hybrid publishing, and then there's the traditional. So in traditional, you don't own your IP, you don't own the copyright, but they like sponsor you to write the book. And then the self-publishing where you do everything yourself. And then I did the middle route, which is I didn't know how to proceed. So there's this company, they're called Manuscripts Press, and they take you through a very rigorous program. And so I like invested into that. And part of the challenge was fundraising. Like they taught us to like do a pre-sale campaign. So we make some of the costs back that we paid into it. And then, but I get to own the IP. And so that's the whole process. Well, I think a year and a half. We had 3 months for the first draft and like 4 months for the rewrite. And other than that, it was like production. So it went really fast. And I have recommended it to people, but it's also like you have to be, I didn't work full time on the side. I was like kind of part-time and part-time the book. And that kind of was, I could make it work, but it was crazy to do it so rigorously. And then they made us interview experts for pretty much every chapter. And the experts, I had like connections and some I just cold reached out to. I did a lot of research. I love research. I love science. It was not that hard. I am a people person. So I really liked like getting to connect with these folks that I probably wouldn't have gotten to otherwise.
How I feel about podcasting. I get to talk to you and all these people all around the world. It's really neat.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you get it.
Yeah. So is there any surprises that you discovered as you were writing your book?
I like that question. I can think of a story is that it was a surprise, but maybe not the way that you're thinking of it. I was actually outdoor guiding for a group of students because that's part of what I do. And so we were out on the coast having a weekend, and a couple of students wanted to grab coffee. So we drove to the nearby town, which is pretty unusual when you're out there remote. And one of the students sat down and had her coffee and like chatted with a fellow person at the coffee shop. Turns out that guy was a professor, or is a professor, in like environmental anthropology and psychology at one of the big leading universities in California. And so we got chatting. She got me involved, the student, and I ended up interviewing him for the book. And so it was really just these weird, like, I would talk about it and someone would be like, oh yeah, I know, I have this friend who's a wildlife photographer. You should talk to her, or this man who would just happen to be having coffee where I was at the same time. So it was things like that where like people were interested in the topic and just wanted to help and support in ways that I wasn't expecting. And then the other thing that I have talked about previously as well is that some folks, because it's a hard thing and you need to create community, you need to create a hype around the book for it to go and reach more people. And so I learned that some folks that I thought would support did, and some other folks didn't, because that wasn't relevant to them, or they didn't care enough, or they didn't really get the vision. And so I had to navigate that whole like social aspect of writing and becoming a published author of like, a lot of people loved it and a lot of people just that I thought would support didn't. And so, yeah, so that's an interesting, like, don't take it personally lesson.
Right. Man. I'm doing a 1,000 rejection challenge as I'm trying to like desensitize myself to rejection, because that's really hard as an artist. And just like it is with a book, you put your heart and soul into something, and if something doesn't accept it or understand it the way you thought they would, it's kind of a blow. But yeah, you can't make everybody happy, I guess.
No, I mean, that's good for you. That's pretty brave to take that on.
It's been an interesting challenge so far.
I can imagine.
And you work with high achieving leaders, is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say that I've been brought into corporate settings and nonprofit settings for like wellness and well-being and like resilience training. So resilience is really how do you thrive personally and professionally in a chaotic world, or like how do you overcome obstacles? And a lot of people who are interested in that are more on the high achieving side. So folks who are really have big goals career-wise, but also want to feel well and want to show up as the best version of themselves at home too. And so a lot of the work that I do is really around like, how do you navigate work-life balance and stress and like disappointments, and how do you not bring that home into your family or your children or whatever that is. So that's been really fun and rewarding, and also challenging to build a business around it, especially when you're approaching it from the ecotherapy lens. Sometimes when I do retreats, it's actually easier. People understand like a nature retreat more than they do resilience through nature, for example.
That's interesting that the high achieving people are the ones like, I need to find a work-life balance. I mean, I guess that makes more sense because they're probably, for me, in my experience, working 60 to 80 hours a week, like I had no work-life balance at that time. What are some things that you try and coach people on as far as obtaining a work-life balance?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that kind of gets underrated is making sure that you're taking time in between meetings, or more importantly, taking time between work and home. And that line gets really blurred if you work from home, but really making sure that you're taking an intentional break between when you leave work in the evening and when you get home. And like if you have a partner and you have let's say childcaring duties, maybe if the partner can, like letting them know, hey, I need a half hour, I'm going to go for a walk, run, or do my own thing in the bedroom, meditate, whatever that is. Like, I think that even just distinguishing work from other life is important. And so that's like step one. being strict around like boundaries if you can. I know not every job allows that, but like emails after hours, or even worse is emails on vacation. And it's hard, especially I've coached a few entrepreneurial clients, and then the line gets really blurred. I mean, you would probably know. And so really, and also a lot of this comes with like awareness, like where are you at? If you're, so I use the, it's called the stress continuum, but it's like green, yellow, orange, and red. And it's like a check-in physically, emotionally, mentally. And so if you are like feeling super good, you've been well rested, well nourished, whatever, maybe you can push a little more for the work piece if you have something that needs to pushing on. But if you're already in orange or deep yellow, that's your signal, that's your cue. Like I don't know what that looks like for each person or each leader, but how can I take care of myself in a way that gets me closer back to the green area of that stress scale? And so how do I take care of my body? How do I take care of my mind? And we're, like you were saying, we're so used to go, but if we just do that, we forget that there is a baseline to return to, or we strive to return to, even if we can't all the time. That's normal, right? It's just unfortunately the human condition sometimes. So just like awareness and making sure that you are taking time. I mean, there's a great study that shows that employees who go for a walk after work are more productive the next day. Like that's so cool that they can prove that. So making sure that whether it's getting outside or exercising or whatever, I think what I'm seeing a lot in clients, and I talk a lot, so just stop me, is dissociation, like coming home and instead of going outside or cooking a healthy meal, they just want to like binge watch something on the TV. And that's, there's no judgment there from me. It's just, can you force yourself to think about what would it be like if I did binge watch if you want to, but can I take a walk first? And you might notice that you actually won't want to binge so much or scroll on your phone as much. So it really is like really being strict with like checking in with yourself over and over again, which we're not taught. We're just not taught that.
In fact, we're taught the opposite, that we need to, the more output you give, the more you're expected to keep giving. And
Especially
women. Yeah, especially. And that cell phone, like you brought up before, you've got people emailing you at all hours and you're working on vacation, or you're right, the doom scrolling is so rewarding after a hard work and you don't want to get outside and move, but you do feel better if you go for a walk. It's just, I think what I'm hearing, that like the main thing is checking in with yourself and like being present and in the moment and like being aware that no, I need to put this thing down and I need to focus on me for a while.
And it's really hard, but yeah, I think that, and nature can be such a tool to do that, because nature's in the present moment. There's so much happening when you look outside that you would miss if you're somewhere else in your mind or on your phone or things like that.
And I find when I'm talking to some people that when you say go outside and be in nature, they're thinking, oh, I need to learn how to hike a mountain or train to go into Antarctica or something, or even something vague, and they don't know where to start. What does meaningful nature connection actually look like in a way that will create change?
Yeah, I love that. And it's something that I talk about a lot too in my work, is like people, yeah, exactly like you said. I think people have this like 3-day, 5-day backpacking into the wild. I mean, literally there's a book called that, right? I wish she did that. So that's great, but that's not for everyone. And I really would not recommend it for everyone. I don't even do that myself necessarily. I think that like getting to know your local ecosystem, so close to home, like what are the parks? What does your local fauna and flora, so animals, trees, plants look like? And just getting curious, like, there's always, I mean, one of the stories in the book that I often reference is like, I was walking through Central Park in New York with a friend, and we're walking and we're chatting, and I think it had just rained, and I like pause and I tell her, look, there's a pigeon taking a bath in the puddle. And she looks at me and she says, how did you notice that? Like, how does your eye? And I'm looking at her like, how did you not see that? Or the little squirrel, same story, same moment. Practically the squirrels are carrying nuts for the winter because New York gets super cold and they're going to go hide them. And so we're in a super urban environment. This is like Manhattan. And yet it's like there's awe there, right? There's fascination, curiosity. I'm feeling joy and she's feeling joy. And so it really is of like just being, if you go outside, go for a walk, don't have your things in your ears, the AirPods or whatever, don't listen to music. It's great to recreate with friends outside, but that's a little bit of a different thing that you're doing, right? If you're recreating with a friend, you're socializing, you're exercising, but you're not necessarily connecting at a deeper level. So really letting nature come to you is what I mean by renature, and like paying attention very closely. And it can take a while. Like it's like a mindfulness outdoors practice. And it doesn't have to be a deep meditation. It's just literally like activating your senses. What do you see? What can you smell? What can you touch? Like different, like the bark of a tree or the flower or whatever. What can you smell? And that's what I encourage people to do. And that's what will shift your internal state. That's what will shift how you feel. Because the more, I mean, the practice is on awe. Other people I've heard in the media call it a color walk. And that's like very basic. I think you pick one color before you go outside for your walk. And this works in like a super urban residential area. Like how many times do you see that color? Where do you see it? Is it changing? Is it surprising? That's basic like nature mindfulness. And yeah, I mean, I think all of those kind of ways of being outdoors. And then for folks who don't have parks, so then there's a whole like socioeconomic access to nature issue. Is like, can you bring plants into your home? I had a client who had limited mobility. She did a terrarium. Don't really ask me what's in there. I don't really know, like dirt, I guess, and like other things, plants, or like a nature altar or something that I've mentioned before. Like go pick branches or sticks or rocks or on your adventures and bring it into your home and just like look at it from time to time or things like that. It really, there's no perfect, like there's a plant behind me and I just like water it every 3 days and I'm checking for the leaves that are growing, right? And so that brings me joy. And you're noticing like little bits of life that give you hope, basically. And then nature is not always pretty and it's sometimes raw and wild and brutal. And so we can talk about that too, but just noticing all of the above.
I'm glad you brought up plants because I forgot about my little plant on my desk and I water it on Wednesdays. And the only way I remember it is water Wednesday.
I love it.
You just saved my little plant.
Perfect.
My little green space in my office.
Oh,
there are some easy things to do to help bring nature inside. Like I've done a couple things with the podcast where I just sit outside and I record nature sounds and then I upload that as an episode of a podcast, kind of going back to, I don't know if you remember the days when they had the whale sound CD or something like that. I used to love that as a kid.
Yes.
The goal is to get a whale sound someday. And you said you had a dolphin experience. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's an introduction of my book. I was just really fortunate to go to a little island in the Bahamas when I graduated high school with my family. It's called Bimini, and they have a wild dolphin population there. They're bottlenose dolphins, and maybe a different type also. And my parents had talked to this nature guy, dolphin guy. I think he goes by Dolphin Whisperer on Instagram. You probably like it. And Joe is his name. And so he would have this little boat, and every day we would go on the boat, and it was a little bit more spiritual. So before we started looking for the dolphins, we would like meditate and like ask them to come and be very intentional because it's wildlife. And with wildlife, like, don't get me started on like pools where people are touching dolphins that are in captivity. Like I have a lot of opinions, but in this case, it's wildlife, so you don't touch them, you might not see them. It's like whale watching. You don't necessarily see a whale when you go whale watching. And basically, we did find the pods because he knew where to look for them. And we would just drop into the water and either have ropes behind the boat and just get towed with the little snorkel masks. And the dolphins love wake. They love the wake of the boat, so they would swim alongside us. Or we could free dive, follow the pod if they were not moving too fast. It's like literally once in a lifetime, very magical. And I wish whatever version of that people can experience with wildlife, whether it's dolphins or otherwise, but just to be touched by an animal. It could even be like, I'm a big horse person. I've been a horseback rider my whole life. But to feel, you mentioned your dogs. I also love dogs. So to feel the love, and I'm getting goosebumps, love and like compassion that comes from whether it's domesticated or wild animals is so powerful. And it makes you want to care and protect. And so I just wish, and you can do this, that's why I'm an ecotherapist. You can do this not even with animals, but also just with nature, right? So I remember taking underserved kids on hikes in college, and they would pick up rocks and find worms and scream, and it was like the coolest thing for them. And so that teaches us over time to care, to give back, to do our best. That's that connection that I'm always looking for and encouraging people to nourish.
Being eye to eye with an animal, especially out in the wild, in their natural environment, and like it looking at you is just like such a connection. I really feel it makes people want to help protect them more. We go every year to Crystal River and we snorkel with the manatees. And this year I was fortunate, and one came right up to me and just see, and they have the tiniest little eye on this giant body, and just like, wow, this thing is looking at me is just the coolest feeling. Part of what I wrote in my book about reconnecting with nature, not to talk about my book while you're talking about your book,
please.
But yeah, I worked at an aquarium, and I agree with the whole, there are issues on that side of the industry for sure. And I can go into a long thing about that. But anyway, I thought I was never going to get to dive with loggerhead sea turtles again. And that is my absolute favorite animal. And in 2023, when I did my first dive after leaving that job, I got to see a loggerhead sea turtle, and it was like I felt like, okay, I have finally broken free from that burnout and everything. And that was a more meaningful experience to me than seeing something captive. I mean, I think that is cool. I live in Ohio right now, and there are a lot of kids that don't get to go to the ocean, and that's a great way for them to learn about the animals. But again, there are issues, but to see it out in the wild is truly a special experience. And I think you're right. You need to connect in whatever way you can. And it helps to heal our planet.
Agreed. And to your point about aquariums or zoos, I think that I just wrote about this over the weekend because I did go to an aquarium, but that aquarium was research heavy, conservation heavy, public outreach, public education, rehabilitation of the wild animals, and some that they can't release, they go into care at the aquarium. Like, we need that. Exactly. Not everyone has the ability, the means to go have these experiences. And plus, if we all did, then the wild wouldn't be so wild anymore, because we're so many of us and so little wildlife overall. But I think teaching people, like exactly what you're saying, your messaging, like teaching people to be aware of, like, how do you evaluate if this is a good place for animals in captivity, and what does that look like versus not, and like really asking the right questions. And I have seen a shift. I do follow, especially whale and orcas in captivity, kind of what's happening there, because it's becoming more stigmatized, thank goodness. And I think we are seeing that over time. They're building a big orca and whale sanctuary, I think in Canada somewhere, and they're going to try and move across the world some of the captive animals. So that's really good to know and hear about. And so I hope that just over time, we need to keep that awareness and that connection with either captive or wild animals, and do our best to support them, whatever that looks like. And sometimes the captivity breeding is what saves the species overall.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's definitely a need for rescue and rehabilitation and the captive breeding. But then going back to the conversation a little bit about capitalism, sometimes people don't agree on what the best animal care is, and then that it just gets ugly. But yeah, there needs to be again, back to the balance.
Yeah, no, I just wish that, like, we're talking, like, more people and world leaders thought this way. If they did, then, I feel like we'd be in a better spot.
Absolutely. The political and economic climate and everything is, like you said, it causes so much anxiety. How can we stay informed and engaged without getting to the point where we're shutting down or needing to binge watch or doom scroll or something like that?
Yeah, of course. I get this question a lot, and it's something that I struggle with as well, of course, especially for anyone who identifies as an empath or a highly sensitive person, which I identify as both. You just feel a lot. And I introduced the concept to folks on like the media diet, and it's like the idea of how you would do a food diet. Media diet is just being really intentional about how you're consuming information and when and how much. And so we're really treating like news and social media and whatever, however else you consume information as little chunks. There's people who feel like if they bury their head in the sand, so to speak, they feel guilty that they're not staying informed. And then they have that privilege of not staying informed is something that I've heard recently. And then there's people who feel so anxious that they are always consuming the news. And that's just, if you're not well or whole or as close to that as possible, it's super difficult to have positive impact. So the more you take care of yourself, the more you're going to be able to show up for others and show up for the world. And so the media diet is just this idea that you're being very intentional and you notice how it affects you as you're consuming it, as you're seeing whatever the images or the news report or Instagram. Instagram is really tricky because of the scrolling, or TikTok, but making sure that you're consuming a little bit at a time. And if it's getting really triggering, it's listening to your body. What does triggering feel like for you? What is it? How do you react mentally, emotionally, physically? Again, it goes back to like knowing yourself and checking in. And I know it's a lot of work, but it's internal work and it can really make a difference. And so being pretty strict, like I have, which is annoying because I work partially online, but I have controls on social media. So I have like, it's a set number of hours per day, under an hour in my case, and then it like shuts off the app and it tells me, would you like to continue? Like, or I have, my partner has, when he opens Instagram, it has like a 15-second countdown. So he doesn't get the like dopamine hit. So you have to like breathe basically or do nothing for 15 seconds. And of course you can bypass it, but like it triggers your brain to not get that instant dopamine hit. And so just really working with the technology and working with yourself primarily to know like how much is too much, how can I not engage more, can I go read a book instead or play with my dog or whatever it is. Yeah, the media diet is like how I would recommend people go about that.
I like that. It's like I was going to joke that we need like a media diet app that keeps track of our media calories.
Yes. Oh my gosh. You just came up. I love it. Go for it. That would market. I'm sure that would market.
Yeah. I do like the 15-second, like stopping the dopamine hit, because I find myself sometimes, and even though I talk about all the time not being on your phone, even if I'm in a social setting, because I can be a little bit introverted, I find myself like, it's like an invisible shield sometimes. Yes. And I'm like, why am I even on this? And I have to remind myself to put it down. So I have to research how to do that 15-second timer.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it, but yeah, there's like something that gets added to your phone and it does that. Yeah. I've also heard of apps. I get ads for these. It's like an ad where, or not, it's an app where if you're scrolling, but it's like teaching you stuff. It's like information, like useful information. So people are really starting to create things that make us like smarter and just doesn't have that constant, like short attention span issue. So I think there are like ways that are being replaced, which is good.
I'm going to have to look at the smarter ones because I find that Instagram and like Facebook is all ads. And I'm like,
it's crazy.
I don't need to see all ads or AI made up stuff.
Yeah.
Let me see. Yeah, we covered a lot of the questions I had prepared. That's awesome. All right. What do I want to ask? So you talked about leading a group outside and going into nature. Do you ever incorporate anything like artistic or creative, like journaling or anything like that? And do you think that creativity and nature can go hand in hand?
Oh yeah, for sure. I feel like I'm not the expert in this, but in my ecotherapy training, we were asked, and then we've probably done this, we were asked to do like a nature mandala. And so it's something you can do with a group that you're leading where they go out and pick up an object and then you all come back together and you create a mandala or like a shape And then you put down your object and it's fitting into this bigger hole to make something. And then every person, you sit in a circle and every person steps forward and like explains why this object and what it means to them. And so it's very like bonding and sweet. I have not actually done that with a group since, but I do definitely incorporate journaling. I incorporate solos. So if I'm teaching a group and if it's a nature retreat, we'll do some meditation or a little bit more of like somatic, quiet, still work. And then they'll go out. This is from indigenous like questing. So I'm definitely not that and never pretend to be, but there's something to solo time on the land that's really powerful. And so they go out with like reflection questions and a journal, and they are opening up themselves and their minds to spontaneous nature events is what we call it in ecotherapy. So whether it's a hawk or I don't know, sudden like wind that blows the grass a certain way, and they interpret it and then they journal about it. And the sharing after those solos and the journaling is always so rich. And even though people can typically, depending on where we are, barely see each other, like the idea is that you don't feel like unsafe, but you feel alone on the land and with nature. And it's really cool to hear people's perspectives afterwards and the kind of commonality of the experiences and what they're sharing. And then of course I'm in psychology, so I care about like the connections that get built and how they can relate to each other and feel that sense of community. And yeah, and so that gets facilitated by a form of art. Also just the sounds. I feel like there's so much with sound in nature that's so inspiring and like soothing for the nervous system because of the rhythmic kind of like repetition of whether it's grasses, branches, or waves, or things like that, or even just sounds like birds that are soothing us from the constant kind of like cognitive overload that we see in our world.
That's my favorite part of doing nature journaling groups is when we get together and share, because you can all be in the same space and people hear different things or they pick out different things and then explaining why that's important to them. And then it helps you to understand yourself and what you like and what seeing things from other people's perspectives and then having a new appreciation for nature.
Yeah, super cool.
Do you have any projects coming up?
Good question. I'm currently working with a PR agency for the book, and not just for the book, but they're really trying to get this message out into the world. And I'm finding that it's so niche that it's actually mainstream media is kind of like not quite ready for it, like open to it, but not really. So we're working together on trying to figure out how to make this a little bit more popular. I don't know if that's the right word, but like more accepted, more understood. I wish like this conversation, people would be like, oh yeah, like I totally get what you're saying, and not just like two of us or however many of us that are thinking this way. So that's that. I would like to do an audiobook, actually, version of my book and read it out myself. I just haven't really had the time, or I need to find out how to do that also. But that would be really fun for folks. It is nonfiction, and so for some people who commute a lot and like prefer audiobooks, I think it'd be really. Did you ever do an audiobook of yours, or are you thinking?
I have not.
Okay.
I might, now that you bring it up. I never even occurred to me. I wrote my book because I was just I took a class, and basically to feel like you're an authority in your podcast space, you're supposed to have a book. And I took this class on how to write a book in a week. And I'm like,
whoa,
that doesn't feel like enough time. So it took about 2 months, and I don't have a job other than the podcast and creating artwork. So I spent a whole 2 months writing and editing and quickly got it out, not in the week that the class wanted. But yeah, the self-publishing was hard. It didn't turn out exactly the way I wanted, but I'm still proud of it because there's activities for people to do. It has a lot of my own personal burnout story and how I reconnected back to nature and little tips and tricks and things that I do. Yeah, I was just going to say, I love when the author reads their own book because you know how you meant for it to come across on the page, and you can put your own inflection and heart into it.
Yeah. So I think that would be really fun to do.
Yeah, that would be neat. Where can people find you?
My website is claraschroeder.com, my first name, last name.com. I'm on Instagram. There is a Renature book page. And then there's Living with Clarity, which is my main kind of public profile. I have almost Substack, also Clara Schroeder. I try to write like quarterly with kind of this change of seasons just to not overwhelm people in their inboxes. I think that's it right now. I'm on LinkedIn for anyone who's a little bit more professional oriented or networking oriented. Love LinkedIn for thought leadership, as you were just speaking to. I find that's a stretch when you're an ecotherapist, but I think I've actually found some really cool people who are in a similar field on LinkedIn. So that's also another way to reach me.
Awesome. Yeah. And then I'll be sure to include your website on the description of the podcast and YouTube so that people can click on it and head right on over. And then what is one tip that you have for our listeners so that they can reconnect with nature?
Yeah, let's see. I think at the most basic level, expanding your definition of nature or thinking about what your definition of nature even is, and acknowledging that I'm thinking of someone who lives in a really urban, deep city environment, that when you step outside, sometimes looking through the skyscrapers at the clouds and the sun, if there's sun, is also nature. And so really, as we were speaking to earlier, not thinking that you need to go swim with wild dolphins or go on a 5-day trek experience in some mountain somewhere, but really acknowledging that nature is never too far away and that we wake up in the morning if it's raining and we're like cranky about it. And that's the nature connection. And so how do you work with that? Get creative, get playful, get a house plant, even if it dies, it's okay, you can try again. And yeah, just don't make it, I mean, I'm in the wellness space, so people often feel like, oh, there's another wellness thing to do, or it's like a chore, even though your wellness should not be a chore. So make it something that is like relaxed. Just don't put yourself under pressure. We don't need more pressure in our lives. We just need more awe and enjoyment and curiosity and play.
Great advice. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thanks for having me. That was a great conversation.
It was. And until next time, unplug, get outside, and see what develops.
Wildly Unplugged podcast is a production of Wild Development Studio. The views, opinions, and statements expressed by individuals during Wild Development Studio's productions do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Wild Development Studio or its affiliates. Participation in any activities, expeditions, or adventures discussed or promoted during our content may involve inherent risks. It is strongly advised that individuals conduct thorough research, seek professional guidance, and take all necessary precautions before engaging in such activities or venturing into wilderness areas. Wild Development Studio, its representatives, or employees shall not be held responsible for any injury, loss, damage, accident, or unforeseen incident that may occur as a result of participating in activities inspired by or discussed in our content. By choosing to engage with our content or act upon any information provided, individuals do so at their own risk and discretion.
For more great iRaw podcasts, visit irawpod.com. That's IROARPOD.com.